The first thing they noticed was the noise. Not the bad kind, not the angry, stressful kind they were used to back home when New Year meant serious speeches, champagne glasses clinking politely, and everyone checking their phones exactly at midnight. This noise was alive. It bounced off walls, climbed over rooftops, and somehow felt like it was laughing. The Ukrainian friends arrived in Manila 2 days before New Year's Eve, thinking they had prepared themselves. They had watched videos, they had read comments, they had heard Filipinos say, "New Year here is crazy," and they smiled, assuming it was an exaggeration. It was not. From the moment they stepped out of the airport, Manila wrapped around them like a warm, noisy hug. The air was thick and alive. Motorcycles buzzed past like insects with personalities. Vendors shouted happily, not angrily. Music came from places that didn't even look like they should have speakers. Everyone seemed to be moving, talking, smiling, doing 3 things at once. There were 5 of them. Friends since university. Different personalities, same curiosity. They came from different cities in Ukraine, but shared the same idea. If they were going to celebrate New Year somewhere unforgettable, it had to be far from winter coats, far from silence, far from the same routine. They wanted warmth. They wanted color. They wanted chaos, but the good kind. Manila delivered immediately. Their Filipino friend, who had been insisting for years that they visit, picked them up and kept laughing as they stared out the windows. He didn't explain much. He just said, "Wait until New Year's Eve," with the confidence of someone about to reveal a secret he knew would shock them. Their first night was already confusing. They tried to sleep, but somewhere nearby someone was singing karaoke like their life depended on it. Not badly, passionately. They lay in bed listening, whispering to each other, laughing quietly, wondering how anyone could sing that loudly and still sound happy. "This is practice," one of them joked, "for New Year." The next day, they were introduced to Filipino food. They thought they were ready. They were not. The table kept filling, and filling, and filling. Rice appeared first, then more rice, then dishes they couldn't pronounce but immediately wanted to try. Fried things, saucy things, sweet things that were supposed to be savory, and savory things that tasted sweet. They stared at spaghetti in disbelief. "This is dessert?" one of them asked carefully. "No, that's spaghetti," their Filipino friend said proudly. They tasted it. There was silence, then laughter, then confusion, then another bite. It wasn't bad. It was just unexpected, sweet, comforting, strange in a way that made them want to keep eating just to understand it better. By the 3rd bite, one of them nodded seriously and said, "I don't understand it, but I respect it." They learned quickly that in the Philippines, food is not just food. It is a love language. Saying eat is the same as saying, "I care about you." Refusing food feels like refusing friendship, and plates are not suggestions. They are challenges. Everywhere they went, someone insisted they eat more. Just a little, they were told. It was never a little. As New Year's Eve approached, the energy in Manila shifted. Decorations appeared overnight. Streets grew louder. Fireworks stands popped up on corners like they had been waiting all year for this moment. Children ran around holding small noisemakers, already practicing how loud they could be. The Ukrainian friends watched everything with wide eyes. Back home, New Year was elegant, controlled, organized. Midnight came with seriousness. Wishes were whispered. Glasses were raised. Then it was over. Here, it felt like New Year was a competition with silence, and silence was losing badly. On the morning of December 31st, they woke up to the sound of firecrackers. At 9 a.m. "Is it midnight?" one of them asked, checking her phone in panic. "No," their Filipino friend said casually. "People are warming up." Warming up. They spent the day preparing, though they weren't sure what they were preparing for. They were told to wear something comfortable, something colorful, something they didn't mind smelling like smoke afterward. They laughed, thinking it was a joke. It was not. By late afternoon, relatives started arriving, then neighbors, then people who were introduced as friend of a friend, but treated like family. Everyone brought something. Food appeared again like magic. Tables expanded, Chairs multiplied. Someone handed them drinks without asking what they wanted. They noticed something strange. No one seemed stressed. Cooking was chaotic but joyful. Children ran between adults. Someone spilled something and laughed instead of apologizing. Music played constantly, switching from pop to love songs to karaoke classics without warning. The Ukrainian friends looked at each other, smiling. "This feels alive," one of them whispered. As night fell, the city transformed. Fireworks began appearing in the distance. Not big ones yet, just teasing flashes, like Manila stretching before the main event. The air smelled different now. Smoke, food, excitement mixed together. They stepped outside just before midnight. That was their mistake. The countdown started somewhere. They couldn't tell where. It didn't matter. Suddenly, everything exploded. Fireworks everywhere. Not just in the sky, on the ground, on rooftops, on streets. Sounds collided. Colors clashed. The noise was so loud they could feel it in their chests. One of them screamed, not in fear, in joy. They laughed, covering their ears, eyes wide, watching the sky turn into pure chaos. It wasn't beautiful in the delicate way fireworks usually are. It was overwhelming, proud, unapologetic. They had never experienced anything like it. At midnight, nobody stood still. Nobody whispered wishes. People shouted, hugged, laughed. Someone handed them grapes and told them to eat them for luck. Someone else told them to jump. Another told them to hold coins. They didn't know what tradition belonged to what belief anymore, so they did everything. They jumped. They laughed. They ate. They hugged strangers. Fireworks kept going. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. "Is it still New Year?" one of them asked. "Yes," their Filipino friend said, "until the fireworks stop." They didn't stop. At some point, one of the Ukrainian women realized she wasn't thinking about anything else. Not home, not work, not worries, not the future. She was just there, laughing, alive, surrounded by people who treated her like she belonged. She looked at her friends. Their faces were glowing, not just from fireworks, but from happiness. Unfiltered, unplanned happiness. Later, when the noise finally softened and everyone sat down again, eating leftovers that somehow tasted even better, one of them said quietly, "I've never felt this free on New Year." No one argued. They stayed up late, telling stories, mixing English, gestures, laughter. Someone sang karaoke again. This time, they joined. They didn't know the words, but it didn't matter. They were taught the chorus and shouted it proudly, horribly, joyfully. As the night ended, Manila felt quieter. Not silent, just satisfied. They went to sleep exhausted, smelling like smoke, food, and celebration. And somewhere between laughter and fireworks, without realizing it yet, the Ukrainian friends understood something important. This New Year wasn't just hilarious. It was the beginning of a love story with a country they didn't expect to fall for. And they had no idea it was about to get even funnier. They woke up late on January 1st, which already felt strange. Back home, New Year's Day was quiet, almost sacred. People slept in, spoke softly, drank tea, and slowly returned to reality. In Manila, reality did not return. It stayed on vacation. The Ukrainian friends woke up to movement. Pots clanking, someone laughing loudly in the kitchen, a radio playing cheerful music like it was still celebrating midnight. The smell of food, again, floated through the air, heavy and comforting. One of them sat up in bed and said, half joking, half serious, "Why are they cooking again?" Another checked the time. It was barely 9 a.m. They eventually shuffled out, hair messy, eyes tired, still wearing the emotional hangover of the night before. What they saw confused them. The table was full, not leftovers, new food, fresh rice, fried things, something sweet. Something with eggs. Someone handed them a plate before they could even say good morning. "Eat," they were told gently, like it was the most important task of the day. They exchanged looks and laughed. This, they were starting to realize, was Filipino recovery culture. You don't recover from celebration by resting. You recover by eating more, laughing more, and keeping people together as long as possible. They sat down, still amazed at how normal this all seemed to everyone else. The Filipino relatives chatted like last night had been just another Tuesday. Someone teased them about how shocked they looked at midnight. Someone else showed videos of the fireworks like trophies. "You survived," one of them said proudly. Survived was the right word. After breakfast, which felt like lunch, they were told they were going out again. "Where?" one of them asked carefully. "Mall," their Filipino friend said. They had to stop themselves from laughing. In Ukraine, malls on January 1st were quiet, almost empty. Here, the mall was alive. Families everywhere, kids running, couples holding hands. Everyone dressed nicely like it was a celebration, not a recovery day. They noticed something quickly. Filipinos didn't look tired. They looked happy. Walking through the mall, the Ukrainian friends became attractions themselves. People smiled at them openly. Some asked where they were from. Others just nodded politely. No one stared in an uncomfortable way, more like curiosity mixed with warmth. One of them whispered, "I feel like everyone is friendly by default." They ate again. Of course they did. Fast food this time. Filipino fast food, fried chicken that tasted sweeter than expected, gravy on rice, desserts that were not shy about sugar. They laughed at themselves for saying, "Just a little," and then finishing everything. In the afternoon, they went back outside. The streets were calmer now, but still alive. Kids played with leftover fireworks. Someone was washing down the street with a hose like it was a normal chore, not the day after a citywide explosion of noise. The Ukrainian friends walked slowly, observing everything. They noticed how people interacted, how strangers talked easily, how laughter came fast and left slowly, how nobody seemed embarrassed to be joyful. One of them said something they hadn't planned to say. "Back home, people would think this is too loud, too messy, too much." She paused. "But here, it feels human." That evening, they were invited somewhere else. Another house, another gathering, another table. They were starting to realize that Filipino social life did not operate on schedules the way they were used to. Invitations were flexible. Time was flexible. Everything revolved around people, not clocks. This time, the group was smaller. Friends of friends. Younger. Louder. There was music playing from someone's phone, and before they could even sit down properly, someone handed them a microphone. "Karaoke," someone announced. The Ukrainian friends froze. They had heard about Filipino karaoke. They thought it was a stereotype. It was not. They watched in disbelief as people sang with complete confidence, regardless of skill. No shame, no hesitation, just emotion. High notes attacked bravely. Lyrics were forgotten and replaced with laughter. Applause followed everything. Then it was their turn. They tried to refuse. It didn't work. They sang, badly, loudly, joyfully. One of them forgot the lyrics and just hummed. Another laughed so hard she had to stop halfway through. The room applauded like they had just won a contest. Something shifted there. In that room. In that moment. They realized Filipinos didn't celebrate perfection. They celebrated participation. You didn't need to be good. You just needed to be there. Later that night, they sat outside, cooling off, drinks in hand, legs tired, hearts full. The noise had softened into background music. Manila felt different now. Not overwhelming, but familiar. One of the Ukrainian women spoke quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "I think I understand why people stay here longer than they plan." No one disagreed. The next days passed in a blur of small adventures. They rode jeepneys for the first time and laughed at how close everyone sat. They learned to say thank you properly and practiced it everywhere. They tried street food with caution and then enthusiasm. They learned that Filipinos use laughter to soften everything, even embarrassment, even mistakes. They also learned about Filipino friendship, how quickly it formed, how deeply it ran. They were invited to places without formal introductions. They were trusted easily. They were included without question. Someone always checked if they had eaten. Someone always made sure they were comfortable. One afternoon, one of them admitted something surprising. In Ukraine, we don't talk to strangers this much. She didn't say it as criticism, just observation. Here, strangers became friends in minutes. They found themselves opening up in ways they hadn't expected, talking about life, about stress, about dreams. Conversations that would normally take months back home happened over one shared meal. And always, there was humor, teasing, jokes, laughter that didn't feel forced. By the time their stay was halfway through, the Ukrainian friends noticed something else. They weren't tourists anymore. They moved differently now, more relaxed, less guarded. They stopped checking their phones constantly. They stopped worrying about plans. They started trusting the flow of things. One of them said it clearly one night. "I think Filipino New Year broke something in me." Everyone laughed. She smiled and corrected herself. "No, I think it fixed something." They didn't know it yet, but this trip, this hilarious, noisy, food-filled New Year, was quietly changing the way they understood joy, connection, and what it meant to feel welcome in a place far from home. And Manila wasn't done with them yet, not even close. By the time the final days arrived, the Ukrainian friends no longer counted time the way they used to. They counted moments instead. They measured days by meals, laughter, and who they talked to last. Morning started whenever someone woke up. Plans changed constantly. Nobody apologized for it. Somehow, everything still worked. They had become used to waking up to voices, to the smell of food, to someone asking if they were hungry before asking if they were awake. They didn't resist it anymore. On one of their last mornings in Manila, they sat quietly on the balcony, coffee cups in hand, watching the city come alive. Jeepneys passed below, loud and colorful. Vendors set up their stalls. Someone across the street sang while sweeping. One of them broke the silence. "I'm scared to go home." It wasn't said dramatically, just honestly. The others nodded. Back home, life felt heavier, structured, private, reserved. People needed reasons to gather. Silence was normal. Distance was respected. In Manila, closeness was default. Joy was loud. Connection didn't need permission. Later that day, their Filipino friends decided to give them a proper send-off. The Ukrainians didn't know what that meant, but they had learned not to question Filipino enthusiasm. They were taken to a local market, not the tourist kind, the real one. Narrow aisles, loud vendors, smells competing for attention. Someone handed them food wrapped in paper before they even asked what it was. They tried everything. Some things confused them, some surprised them, some instantly became favorites. They laughed at how many times they heard, just try, and how often they ended up loving it. One of them joked, "I came here thinking Filipino food was just rice and chicken." She paused, chewing thoughtfully. "I was very wrong." As they walked, people greeted them casually. Smiles, nods, jokes. No one treated them like strangers anymore. They weren't special guests. They were just there. And it felt good. That evening, the farewell dinner happened. A long table, too much food, familiar faces, new faces, people they had met only once but who greeted them like old friends. There was laughter. There were stories about their first night in Manila and how shocked they were at midnight. Someone replayed videos of fireworks again, and they groaned and laughed at themselves. One of the Filipino friends raised a glass and said something simple. "Thank you for celebrating with us." The Ukrainians exchanged looks. They realized something important in that moment. They hadn't just been visiting a country. They had been included in a life. When it was their turn to speak, one of the Ukrainian women stood up. She wasn't nervous, just emotional. She said she didn't expect this trip to change her. She expected fun, photos, stories. Instead, she found warmth. She talked about how Filipinos celebrated together, how joy wasn't private, how people checked on each other, how nobody let anyone sit alone too long. She laughed as she admitted she still didn't understand why New Year's felt like a full-day festival. "But," she added softly, "I hope I never forget it." The room went quiet for a moment. Then someone clapped. Then everyone did. Later that night, after hugs and promises to visit again, the Ukrainian friends packed their bags slowly. They moved like people who didn't want to rush the ending. They folded clothes that smelled like Manila air. They tucked away small gifts. They laughed at how much food they were taking, just in case. At the airport the next day, the emotions finally caught up. They hugged tightly. Longer than expected. Stronger than planned. One of them whispered, "This doesn't feel like goodbye." And it didn't. On the flight home, they scrolled through photos, fireworks, food, karaoke, random moments that suddenly felt precious. One of them looked out the window and said quietly, "Next New Year won't be the same." Another replied, smiling, "Then we'll come back." Back in Ukraine, life resumed. Snow, silence, familiar routines, but something was different. They laughed more easily now. They reached out more often. They invited friends over without reasons. They cooked Filipino dishes together and told stories about Manila like it was a place they used to live, not just visit. They noticed they were warmer, more open, less guarded. When people asked about their New Year trip, they didn't talk about fireworks first. They talked about people. They talked about laughter. They talked about how, for a brief moment, they felt like they belonged somewhere completely unfamiliar. And every New Year after that, when midnight came quietly in Ukraine, they remembered Manila. The noise, the food, the joy, and the way a city halfway across the world taught them that celebration wasn't a tea about the calendar. It was about choosing to be together,